So once we come to the treatment, the most important thing is to relieve the ischemia, relief of symptoms, relief of pain, relief of ischemia. In that context, we use anti-anginal drugs or anti-ischemic drugs. Beta blockers particularly reduce the heart rate and demand of the myocardium, oxygen demand of the myocardium, and help the ischemia. The non-dihydropyrimidine calcium blockers like verapamil and diltiazem can be used in the conditions where beta blockers are contraindicated. They have a negative inotropic effect, reduce the cardiac contractility, myocardial oxygen consumption, and decrease the heart rate. Of course, you have got metabolic agents such as trimetazine, ranitidine. These will try to alter the metabolism of the myocardium and see that oxygen requirement for the metabolism and of the heart muscle is reduced. And of course, you have got nitrates and calcium channel blockers. Nitrates and calcium channel blockers together are vasodilators. Particularly, nitrates are coronary vasodilators. Thus, vasodilatation increases the blood flow. There is what is called the reduced preload and reduced venous return. So, nitrates and the calcium channel blockers with their effect on the systemic circulation reduce the afterload. Calcium channel blockers, beta blockers, nitrates all reduce the afterload, and arterial or resistant vessels are dilated, so much so venous capacitance vessels also are dilated, venous return is reduced, and reduction in the preload to the heart, so much so the work of the heart is reduced. There are newer drugs which act on the heart rate directly, the IF receptors, stimulants which are now being used, ivabradine, and these directly have a negative effect on the SCA node and reduce the cardiac contractility and heart rate without having the side effects of beta blockers. So, these will come very handy in patients where we cannot use beta blockers, but we still want to reduce the heart rate. We can use ivabradine and other drugs. So, remember, the anti-anginal and anti-ischemic drugs are beta blockers, calcium channel blockers, non-dihydropyrimidine. Never use dihydropyrimidine derivatives like nifedipine or amlodipine for acute infarction, because they are not going to be, and they will increase the heart rate and they are not going to reduce the demand of the heart. Of course, nitrates are being vasodilators and also have systemic effects of reducing the preload and then reducing the venous return and increasing the venous dilatation. And of course, we have got the newer drugs such as the ivabradine. So, these are some of the anti-anginal and anti-ischemic treatments that we would like to give to our patient of acute myocardial infarction. The most important treatment of acute ST segment elevation myocardial infarction is not vasodilatation of the coronaries, is not anti-anginal drugs, is not symptom relieving drugs. It is to prevent the further occurrence of thrombotic process in the coronaries. It is to arrest or preempt the existing thrombotic environment in the body. In that scenario, the most important agents for the treatment of acute myocardial infarction would be these three classes of drugs, which are called together as anti-thrombotic treatments. Anti-thrombotic treatments include antiplatelet agents, anticoagulants, and fibrinolytics. All patients fibrinolytics may not be useful or may not be used, but anticoagulants and antiplatelets are a must in every patient of acute coronary syndrome presenting as ST segment elevation myocardial infarction. Let us now consider the antiplatelet agents. Imagine that this is the platelet. Platelet is a very active molecule, cell. These platelets do not have any nuclei. Aspirin affects the COX-1 enzyme, that is, so much so the thromboxane A2 formation is reduced. Okay, cyclooxygenase is COX, cyclooxygenase 1 is inhibited or permanently made inactive by the aspirin. Whereas clopidogrel and ticlopidine, they act on the ADP receptor, And then there is another receptor which is called the thromboxane A2 thrombin collagen receptor, which further augments the activity of the platelets and makes them highly active by the stimulation by thromboxane A2 and thrombin that is formed during the initial stages of platelet adhesion and activation, and of course the collagen phosphodiesterase also acts there, whereas dipyridamole cuts the phosphodiesterase, so much the activation is reduced. And there are other receptors called the GP2B3A receptors, and here these are also called the fibrinogen receptors, and these are the class 4 agents. So we have got the first agent to block the platelets via the cyclooxygenase and reducing the thromboxane A2 is aspirin. The second type of agents are those which block the ADP receptors, the clopidogrel and the ticlopidine, and third type of drugs are those which block the activation of the thromboxane A2 thrombin collagen and phosphodiesterase activity, the dipyridamole, and of course the thromboxane A2 formation itself is reduced by aspirin, and of course the fourth class of drugs which act on GP2B3A receptors, which are also called the fibrinogen receptors, and these are the four different types of antiplatelet mechanisms. Three of them are very commonly used now in cases of acute ST segment elevation myocardial infarction. This is to further illustrate the platelet receptors. A platelet which is active, which produces AA, arachidonic acid. There are what are called the thrombin receptors, as we have seen. These are the thrombin receptors. The P is the platelet activating factor, C is the collagen, TX is the thromboxane A2 receptor, and through which the thromboxane A2 activates the platelets, and of course E is the epinephrine that also activates the platelets, and factor 10A and 5A and coagulation factors also come and act on the platelets to activate, and of course the GP glycoprotein P2A3B receptors, these also are useful for activation of the platelets. So platelets may be activated by the thromboxane A2, by the collagen, and by the platelet activating factor receptors, or through the thrombin, through the ADP receptors on which clopidogrel and ticlopidine act, or by the epinephrine, or by the GP2A3B receptors. And then of course the coagulation cascade also can produce activated factors 10A and 5A, which have direct action to activate the platelets, and these platelets secrete several vasoactive chemicals including arachidonic acid. So these GP2B3A receptors are essential for binding one platelet to the another through fibrinogen bridges and von Willebrand factor bridges. If the fibrinogen were to bind to these receptors and it attaches one platelet to other, and this results in platelet aggregation, and platelet aggregation results in further activation of the platelets and then formation of the initial primary clot. Now if we have seen the receptors in the previous slide, we see the platelet receptor blockers here. So the glycoprotein 2B3A receptors are blocked by their blockers. Three drugs are available, which we will see in the later stage. The thrombin that is formed in the initial phase of the coagulation or due to the sustained coagulation factors that acts on the thrombin receptors, and we use anticoagulants. These antithrombins are anticoagulants which will block the thrombin receptor. And then when we give platelets, of course when we give the aspirin, it blocks the formation of arachidonic acid by blocking the cyclooxygenase enzyme and by reducing the thromboxane A2. Ticlopidine and clopidogrel, they block the ADP receptor. So now we have got drugs to block the platelet activation through the cyclooxygenase and thromboxane A2. We have got drugs to block the ADP receptors. We have got drugs to block the glycoprotein receptors. We have now anticoagulants to block the thrombin receptors. So once the glycoprotein receptors are blocked, platelet to platelet adhesion does not take place. Platelets cannot adhere to one another, so much so further clot formation is reduced. So the master drug or the wonder drug for acute myocardial infarction and coronary artery disease, in fact for any vascular disease, is acetyl salicylic acid or aspirin and its severe protection. ASA irreversibly acetylates COX-1 enzyme, so much so decreased production of thromboxane A2 and arachidonic acid. Once the platelet is attacked by ASA, irreversibly it binds. Till its lifetime is over, it cannot come out of the effect of the ASA. So platelets are irreversibly rendered inactive by the aspirin. So new platelets have to form in the absence of ASA for the platelet activity to resume. That takes around 8 to 10 days. GI bleed occurs in 1 per every 670 patient years. It's very rare. We need not really be afraid of the GI bleed because GI bleed is not that common, 1 per 670 patient years. But of course, watch for symptoms of GI bleed and exclude patients who have bleeding diathesis, who have active peptic ulcer, who have bleeding peptic ulcer, who had bleeding ulcer in the previous episodes. Such patients we have to be very careful in giving them aspirin. Aspirin should be given in all cases of coronary artery disease and CV diseases for secondary prevention. As a primary prevention, that is without having any coronary disease, a normal person should take aspirin every day, because till now there is no recommendation to say that primary prevention aspirin we can give. But in one condition, primary prevention aspirin is indicated if there are 2 or more risk factors for cardiovascular disease or if the patient is diabetic. If the patient is diabetic, no other risk factor is required. If the patient is not diabetic, if he has got any other 2 risk factors like smoking, dyslipidemia, obesity, hypertension, LPA, Indian origin, whatever it is, tell me one person, any of our patients who are having less than 2 risk factors. So much so, every patient of ours who is a cardiometabolic patient should receive primary prevention true in India, and majority of our patients are diabetics too. In ACS, acute coronary syndrome, the dose is not 150 milligrams or 75, it is 325 milligrams of chewable non-entry coated aspirin. Later on, the dose of aspirin from the second day onwards it is reduced to 75 to 150 milligrams. Always a low dose is preferred for maintenance. Give 75 so that the antiplatelet effect is very good at that dose. The bleeding complications are minimum. ASA intolerance, we should remember, some people they do not tolerate aspirin. In such patients, clopidogrel 75 milligrams will come in very handy. Aspirin resistance is also an issue in certain individuals, and it occurs in around 15% of the patients who have acute myocardial infarction. So the ADP receptors in the platelets, if they are blocked, they also produce antiplatelet effects. The ADP receptors are P2Y12 receptor, which is irreversibly blocked by clopidogrel, prasugrel and teclopidine. Teclopidine of course has got associated hepatic damage and also thrombocytopenia, not commonly used. Clopidogrel and prasugrel are very wonderful drugs to be used as ADP receptor blockers to achieve antiplatelet effects. There are certain newer drugs coming which can be used to block the GI proteins and not the receptor, through which the GI protein, through that only, through the calcium, platelet activation is mediated. The GI protein itself is attacked by Canglor, agent 6140. These could be in future drugs because the advantage is these have got a reversible effect on the platelets, whereas here the effects are irreversible. Until the platelet dies, the effects are irreversible here, whereas the effects are irreversible with these drugs, and those drugs are still not available for routine use. Just as we have seen about aspirin, we should know about clopidogrel. Clopidogrel, prasugrel or ADP receptor, P2Y12 receptor blockers, and then teclopidine not used at all because of hepatic and decreased platelet problems. Side effects of clopidogrel are few. Sometimes it may cause neutropenia. Dosage 300 mg stat followed by 25 mg every day, combined with or without aspirin. A higher dose of clopidogrel is recommended nowadays, 600 mg in those patients who are going in for primary PCI. Minimum of 1 month of treatment should be given in all cases of acute coronary syndrome. Maybe they should be continued up to 1 year. Indicated in all cases of unstable angina and STEMI and STEMI. Prasugrel is more efficacious than clopidogrel, and the bleeding complications also are lesser. The dose of prasugrel 60 mg stat plus 10 mg daily and less bleeds with this drug. Dipyridamole is also an antiplatelet drug, not through the ADP receptors but through the thromboxane collagen receptors, and this is not being used at all now in ACS, and there are no indications for using dipyridamole in cardiac conditions except in people who have valve replacement and things like that. Of course, in cerebrovascular accidents, dipyridamole still has got some role. Now, the other antiplatelet agent will be glycoprotein 2B3A inhibitors. There are 3 drugs in this class: abiciximab, tirofiban and eptifibatide. All have to be given by intravenous route, and they block the final common pathway through which one platelet is joined to the other. These receptors are also called the fibrinogen receptors, and fibrinogen is the linkage between one platelet and the other, and when the platelets are active, they throw out their glycoprotein receptors out, and these external receptors connect with one another from the neighboring platelets through the fibrinogen. So these blockers obviously block the final pathway. They prevent platelet aggregation by blocking the fibrin links. In high-risk ACS patients and in PCI, these drugs are indicated. All those patients who are going in for primary PCI or any type of PCI, and all patients of high-risk ACS must get GP2B3A receptor blockers. Outcome benefit is seen beyond the combination of ASA and clopidogrel, and of course heparinization. In medium and high-risk ACS, should be added to aspirin and heparinization and clopidogrel early, all before angiography and PCI. In low risk patients, aspirin clopidogrel is enough, and we have no reason to give these GP blockers. Vivaluridine now replaces heparin plus GP blockers. Instead of using heparin plus GP blockers, we can substitute that by bivalirudine and thus reduce the bleeding complications. STEMI treatment with fibrinolysis, whenever you treat STEMI with fibrinolysis using a fibrinolytic agent, we should not give the glycoprotein receptor blockers. So these are some of the indications and uses of these blockers. The dosages I have not mentioned here. Those who are interested, they can consult the reference material given there, so that you can obtain the exact doses and how you administer those agents.